Hello everyone, my name is Machina. Welcome to my humble abode. If this is your first time visiting, hello, part 2. Anyways, if you clicked on this video, I'm assuming you're here to hear my story. It is Pride Month. We need some more information that isn't given to us by companies that don't know what they're talking about or just doing it because they want to make money, but we're not going into that in this video. No, we are just focusing on this narrative because interacting with the community is how I figured out that I was Asero NB. I would probably still have no idea if I had not looked into the internet and started doing my research. I want other people to be able to learn about people like me because it just might so happen that you're in fact part of the community as well, or someone you know is probably part of the community, or maybe you're just here and you want the information, which is admirable. I think that the search for knowledge is among one of the best, but philosophical, we're not getting into that. Okay, if I keep looking to the side, it's because I have notes, so I hopefully won't go off on too many tangents or forget something important. Anyways, so let's just get right into it. Ace, Aro, NB. That was actually the order that I figured out these identities for myself. So Ace and Aro kind of came packaged together. One followed the other because for me they were both fairly easy to just go down the checklist and go, yes, I've had this experience. Yes, I've had this experience. Yes, I've had this experience. MB was much more difficult for me, but we're gonna get to that in a little bit. So, my story is not particularly dramatic. I am very, very, very lucky to have not had to discover all of this through trauma, because unfortunately it does seem like there are a lot of people in the community that did have that. Hopefully there will be more stories like mine where it wasn't as stressful for people to figure out these things for themselves. So, I had been peripherally aware of the community ever since about middle school. I California, Valley, there were people that were um just discovering their romantic and sexual orientations or their gender identities. I had a friend who actually ended up being they them, and then once I started getting into high school, I hadn't really contemplated that I might actually be one or more of, I might fit one or more of these labels because, and this sounds really, really dumb, but I figure somebody out there, probably several somebodies out there, get what I'm saying here. I was told a lot when I was younger that I was unique or I was really different. So when I came across the whole sexual gender identity as a concept, I was like, oh, well, I can't be different from like mainstream society because that would be too unique. As if they aren't complementary, or as if being too unique is a thing. Um, but anyways, so probably around, I want to say junior senior year, my buddies, like you do in a peer group, you do random stuff together. We took sexual orientation quizzes and shared our results with each other. I was the person in the group that got asexual, and I wasn't really surprised, which I feel like should have been an indicator, but I didn't really think much of it at the time because it's basically a personality quiz, and I I had the perception that it's really what you put into those that determines what you get out. In terms of like they can only be so accurate, basically. Um, but also, like I said, I was wary of even considering these labels because I was really worried about how people were going to perceive me. I was worried that I wouldn't be, insert identity here enough, or that I was like faking it to myself, which upon further inspection seems to be a thing that people do deal with a lot in the community, is feeling like they're not enough imposter syndrome. So yeah, and let me consider my other notes here. Basically, I started looking more into it because I got curious again. I started looking into, because I only had a vague concept of asexuality. While I was looking at asexuality, aromanticism came up, and I was like, "Whoa, that's a thing! What?" Because you know, no one tells you these things. I had, especially, I had a lot of help from a couple of friends in real life who actually had, um, done their research and are some of these identities. Um, Also, the asexuality.org forums, AVEN, helped me so much. They basically were like the deciding factor in me figuring out, oh, oh yeah, like the italicized O that you see in fanfic. Yeah, yeah, that one. Um, so because I grew up in an environment where sex and romance weren't really heavily emphasized, and I was just kind of encouraged to do my own thing, and also my parents were like, "Oh, you don't want to have a relationship? Well, that's totally fine by us," because you know. I just I didn't really register that I didn't understand things beyond the basic scientific reasoning. I didn't understand why sex was appealing to people. It actually, I what's referred to within the community as sex repulsed, or I was more so at the time, wherein like even the idea of sex like squicked me out basically. Um and romance, it was like I enjoy romance. I enjoy hearing about romance if it's, I enjoy it if it's well written, or if somebody in real life is having a relationship that's going really well. Like that's really awesome. And I always thought I was going to be, just like everyone else, like, oh, I'll have a romantic relationship eventually. But I didn't feel attraction all the way through like middle school and high school, and I was seeing everybody else going gaga over somebody and was wondering, hey, why hasn't that happened to me yet? I thought it was a little weird. Um, Especially since like I fantasized about it too, because I thought it was cute. But as soon as I put myself in a situation where I was expected to be romantic, like I did try dating, I thought that the feelings would just develop for some reason. That no, but no, sweetie, there has to be something there, and I didn't understand why there wasn't something there. And at the time, I didn't really perceive it as broken, but it was really stressing me out because it ended up like really affecting some of my friendships. Um, but eventually, I started realizing that I fit some of the standard issue, like, here's your clues. um Maybe a like slightly off one was that I've always gotten flustered by even people just kissing on television. Even tiny me had the idea that kissing was like the greatest expression of love or something, and it was like incredibly intimate. Yes, I know, you small child. but but anyways, um I always desired close relationships, but it was more like I wanted to hold on to the friendships that I had. I was so afraid at the time of like people abandoning me or like moving on from me, that I think I like kind of conflated the two. Um, Obviously, like I said, I didn't really experience sexual or romantic attraction. I didn't understand it from anything other than a purely scientific perspective. Um, I'd actually say now I have a greater understanding just because I've done more research into it, and also because now I understand that aesthetic attraction is a separate thing. Like you can see something as beautiful and appreciate, said person or said like painting, for example, aesthetically, but not want to do anything about it. It's like, oh, I can look at you and appreciate you. Yeah. But that was how I figured it out, and like constantly questioning my identity. Uh, so it sounds like a really long process, but a lot of this happened within the span of a couple of weeks, and it was relatively painless. Gender was much more stressful for me because it felt amplified in terms of the, oh, I won't be enough of this, the whole not trans enough or not non-binary enough. And I had just started my anthropological journey because I'm actually an anthropology and global studies major. So anthropology was teaching me that gender roles are, to some degree at least, arbitrary. they're different between cultures. Now I know that in a lot of cultures it's actually normal to have way more than two genders because, we have been raised in a society. Anyways, but the gender thing was much more stressful to me just because I felt like there wasn't as clear of a checklist. I didn't experience, or at least I thought at the time, I didn't experience a lot of physical dysphoria. I thought I didn't experience social dysphoria. Upon further inspection, which I will talk about later, I actually have like something mild, I think. Um, but I found this article, which I will link below in the description, that basically talked about the idea of being cis hetero as the null hypothesis. So if you were taking your sexual and gender or sexual or gender identity into account and thinking that being cis is the norm, it's the null hypothesis you're testing against, you know, why is that assumed to be normal? Why is cis hetero considered normal? You know, um, why aren't you testing them on the same equivalent basis? And basically, I have these two older posts that I'm consulting while I'm talking about this that really just show this journey that I went through, especially up in here. Um, and eventually I was like, yeah, okay. A lot of my being female, I was assigned female at birth, has to do with how I was perceived. I never felt particularly female. It made me uncomfortable a lot of the time. You know, it's I hung out a lot with, you know, I didn't fit, basically. I just did not fit. I thought for the longest time I was tomboy. That wasn't really the case either. The more I've been using introspection on my past, the more I'm like, wow, I think even when I was younger, if I'd had the words for this, at the time, I still would have been too scared of identifying myself as such, but I think I was, you know. Um I would say the big difference ever since my last couple posts, I had one in 2019, then one in 2020. The first one, I was like, oh, I'm Ace Aero, and then the second one, I was Ace Aero NB. Um, I'm much more comfortable with the concept of sex. I'm no longer as strongly sex repulsed, just because I've been in communities where sex is dealt with, more positively. It's not always, you know, a joking matter, I guess. I know that sounds weird, but like there's so much innuendo in society and I never understood that. I never understood like why, but I'm more comfortable of course with the idea of enjoying romance but not engaging with it myself because I don't like play acting someone I'm not. Imagining myself in a romantic relationship is like imagining a completely different person because I just don't. But I can write romance, which is the funny part. And like I said, I enjoy consuming well done romance media. Um, I would also say that I've had just a lot of change in the way that I perceive these aspects of my personality. Obviously, everything's mutually, is tied together, nothing's mutually exclusive. But it's really made me more comfortable with who I am. I feel more free. I feel like I'm actually being myself. And, for the longest time, I was like, oh my gosh, who even is myself, right? So, it's been, I'm, very lucky. It's been a very positive experience. And I think I'm going to continue along that path. I have more research to do because I should know a little bit more, especially about the smaller subsections of especially the non-binary umbrella. I've looked pretty well into the aromantic and asexual ones, I think, or at least enough that I have like a general understanding, but um I have a stronger foundation in my identities too. They're not the only thing I am, but I feel a stronger connection to them. If the lighting changes, it's because I'm like referencing back. But just looking back at my old posts, my old anecdotes about it is crazy because I'm just realizing there was actually more there, you know? In the case of being non-binary, you know, I only recently have analyzed myself enough, psychoanalyzed myself enough basically, to realize, yeah, I've had minor social and physical dysphoria probably most of my life. You know, puberty was a very rough time for me because all of a sudden, like, it's such a small thing, but when you hug somebody and suddenly there's something on your abdomen that wasn't there before. You know, I didn't realize it, but I have a habit of crossing my arms because I'm so uncomfortable with the fact that I have a developed chest, you know? Um, and another thing, cutting my hair. You know, I actually used to have long hair most of my life. No one had ever seen me with anything other than longer hair. When I cut my hair, it was actually a huge part of being like, wow, that's me. You know, that's the person I've never seen that was there all along, basically. Um, so yeah, I don't really have too much more to add to it, I don't think. If I do, I'll try and put it in the description as well. If you would like me to recommend some more resources where maybe you can go check out Ace Aero stuff more, you know, just songs, media. If you just want some general recommendations, like hit me up in the comments. I am more than happy to do that. Um, but anyways, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully I will be able to release a little bit more content for Pride Month. Might be some, like, more talky videos like this. Might be speed paints, might be DIYs, might be going to play, you know, on a server that's having a Pride celebration. Who knows? But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you gleaned some really good information from this, and I will talk to you later. We will see how my experience pans out from here.